Thank you, Chelsea. Great. Good morning. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Design Commission, and welcome. If you're joining us via Zoom and would like to testify, please sign up through the Google form link, which is also on the meeting agenda. Commissioners, a reminder to please bring the microphones close to you and speak into them when talking. I'm going to hand it over to Chair Martin.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Martin. I am Chair at PDC. Welcome to the Public Design Commission meeting. As New York City's design review agency, the Public Design Commission has jurisdiction over the design of permanent structures, landscape architecture, and art proposed on or over city-owned property. Today's meeting is being held in person at City Hall. Members of the public can attend and give testimony either in person or remotely. The public meeting is now commencing with the consent agenda and items numbers 28965 to 29000. Are there any recusals to note? Okay, seeing none. Let the record show there are no recusals. I'll now call for the vote on the consent agenda. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote for the consent agenda. Ken Seth Armstead.
Approval.
Isabel Castilla.
Approval.
Lori Hawkinson.
Approval.
Bill Heinzen.
Approval.
And the
Mary
20.
Maloney?
I'll have her take
Approval.
Near in a bottle.
Merrill Tish, who is voting remotely as per
Okay.
PDC resolution.
Just
Merrill,
one bottle.
Approval.
thank
very
you.
much.
And Jimmy Van Bramer.
Approval.
I also let the record show all are in favor and the consent agenda items are passed and approved. We'll now continue with the public hearing portion of the meeting. The first public hearing item is 29001, preliminary review of the conservation of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, 1902, at West 88th Street and Riverside Drive in Riverside Park, Manhattan. Please note, this project is located at a designated scenic landmark, and as such, the Landmarks Preservation Commission has issued an advisory report that the commission has reviewed. Per standard procedure, applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We'll hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants, and we can now proceed with the presentation. So, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Sybil Young, Parks's Historic Preservation Officer. I'm joined today by Lang Pugh of WXY Architects, the lead consultant for this project, Elizabeth Moss, Historic Preservationist from Lyra, Margaret Bracken, the landscape architect for Riverside Park, and Jonathan Kuhn, our Director of Art and Antiquities. We are very happy to be here today at this point in the project, presenting the restoration plan for Soldiers and Sailors to you. The monument was constructed in 1902 and dedicated to the nearly 400,000 residents of New York State who fought in the Civil War for the Union cause. Today, the monument is not only a highly significant place for veterans, but it is also a true landmark in all senses within this community and beyond. It hosts the largest Memorial Day celebration every year in the city. Every summer, there's a heavily attended Shakespeare program on the steps. There are exercise classes held on the plaza. At any given moment, if you're sitting by this monument, it's really just a hub of activity. You will probably recall we were here in July presenting the plan for accessibility at the monument, and through a series of ramps and paths, barrier-free access will be provided to all levels. And since that time, we have further studied the monument, including having our team of conservators from the firm of Vertical Access use ropes access to really review the stones and roof at close range. I should note that the proposal was unanimously approved by the community board, and we received a favorable advisory report from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. It's because of, this, as I mentioned, how significant this is in the community, that it also has a long history of advocacy for this project. And what has brought us here today is thanks to Councilmember Gail Brewer, the Riverside Park Conservancy, the New York Landmarks Conservancy, the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial or Monument Association, Community Board 7, our own Parks, Art and Antiquities Division, that we now have this significant funding in mayoral funds to complete the project. Here is our location at 89th Street within the park. A couple of historic images, this one from 1934, taken before the railroad was decked over and really showing the monument's prominence within the park. Here is an image from 1911, and then that same view today. As you can see, the upper esplanade is fenced off from public access and has been for a number of years. A timeline of the monument's history. Again, it was completed in 1902. In the 1930s, it underwent some restoration work. A comprehensive restoration was completed in 1962. In 1976, the Landmarks Commission designated a landmark. And then in 2017, we did complete a comprehensive condition survey and recommendation study for the monument. We're fortunate that several of the firms that worked on that study are part of our current design team today. The monument has remained largely unchanged since its construction in 1902, with two exceptions. When it was originally built, the terraces were paved with brick in a herringbone pattern with marble banding. In the 1930s, that brick was replaced with concrete. And then in the 1960s restoration, it was replaced again with sandstone. Also in the 1960s restoration, the marble balustrades were replaced with limestone. So the approach to the restoration is all purely restorative or replacement in kind, with one exception, and that is that sandstone paving that was installed in the 1960s is in very poor condition. So we are proposing to go back to the original brick design, that herringbone brick with marble banding. But aside from that, it really is truly restoration or replacement in kind. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Moss, our historic preservation consultant. Elizabeth was part of that team in 2017 that developed the condition survey. So she started this project with a great deal of knowledge, and she will walk you through the plan. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Sybil. Good morning. Thanks for having us here to present. We're excited. The next two images I'm going to walk you through are really orientation ones. What we're looking at here is an elevation looking towards the west. So we'll be standing on Riverside Drive. The primary access to the site is from the south, which on this slide would be on the left. Oops, sorry. Where you'd be entering the lower terrace, going through the upper terrace, and then there's an esplanade that goes around the tower. And on the right side of the image is the north approach in Belvedere. And the tower, this is also to demonstrate it's not just the tower monument, but it's the site and the pavings, which is part of this restoration scope. And in plan view, again, entering the site from the south, up the terraces, the esplanade, and the north approach and the Belvedere. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the scope and approach of the project. And this is a nice slide that demonstrates the palette of restoration materials. The image on the upper left is taken from in front, just the steps to the esplanade in front of the main entry. So you can see the granite steps, marble banding of the terraces, marble at the door surround, marble piers. There's the bronze tablets on the terraces, bronze door, the crab orchard sandstone that Sybil had mentioned. This slide on the lower left is an shows the mosaic floor and the bronze manhole cover on the interior. Bless myself in the morning. The middle image is of the, obviously an aerial view from the neighbors showing the lead roof and the lead flashing at the cornice level. And the lower right side is representative of the foundation stone. As Sybil mentioned, this is really a restorative approach project. Repair with compatible materials, salvage and reuse, and where necessary, replace in kind. And I'll just highlight three significant portions of this project. The sheet metal roofing will be replaced in kind. It's reached the end of its service life. The pavers will be replaced, and there'll be extensive repairs and restoration of the marble of the tower and throughout the site. So in terms of materials, we're going to start focusing on the marble because that really is the most significant in terms of quantity and visually what you see at the site. So we'll start with this slide focuses on the tower. And we'll be replacing missing and severely deteriorated elements in kind. For example, the image here shows the eagle above the entrance is its front of its head is missing. So that will be recarved in kind. And at the entablature level, the overhanging projections of the modillions and dentils, several of them have missing elements or are failing. So that would be an in-kind Danby marble replacement. And 100% of the monument will be repointed based with compatible mortar based on laboratory analysis and field mock-ups. And in addition, the monument will be cleaned.
I'm just curious, do we know when and how the head went missing?
This particular missing element, I don't know the date. Jonathan of Parks may, but vandalism. Yeah, and this one probably vandalism, but a long time ago. And we would have a similar approach to the marble on the terraces, which is the whole perimeter of the site. Again, so it would be replace in kind missing elements with new Dutchmen. And they continue to fall off. So I brought a little show and tell for you. This I found in the bushes. And it would also be repointed and cleaned. The limestone on this project is limited to the balusters. Overall in good condition would be to repair with compatible materials and very selective replacement with salvaged units. Granite also in overall good condition. General scope is 100% repointing, cleaning, resetting of the steps, and very limited in-kind replacement. The bronze elements, you can see the flagpole shaft, the grille on the dome, some of the plaques on the terraces, the commemorative plaques, and the manhole cover. This would be a preservative approach where it would be a hot wax, cold wax treatment. The only element of the project that we anticipate having off-site restoration is the monumental bronze entry door. Currently, the hinges are not operable or with extreme difficulty, so it'd be removed off-site for restoration. There are selective missing elements, some bronze rosettes, a little bit of repetitive trim elements those would be recast in kind and brought back and reinstalled on site. There's a modest mosaic floor on the interior, which has suffered from water infiltration, which that problem will be resolved when we're restoring the exterior and with the repointing. But the mosaic will be repaired, and areas with very severe deterioration will be replaced in kind with matching tessera. The lead roof has reached, sorry. Sure.
I just want to ask you one quick question about the flooring on the interior where there's the crack. Are you sure there isn't foundation or underlayment damage from water seeping?
The preliminary structural analysis shows no indication of that, but as we develop this further, we will.
So you scanned it already? You did like ultrasound?
I don't think an ultrasound was done here. It was more of a physical.
So visual.
Yep.
inspection. But like, there was one crack I saw earlier and it looked like a crack that I see in tile when there's a break in the substructure.
Well, and as part of the,
You'll-
right, as part of the design to this, that will be a focus with the structural engineer. But
The engineers.
Yep.
They were able to get into the vault underneath, and I don't believe they've seen anything that would be indicated as settlement, but there is freeze thaw and moisture problems that cause things to move.
I just always a question about whether or not it's just at the tiling level or it's the substrate.
yeah, and we'll confirm that and whatever is required to be repaired. We'll make sure, otherwise your crack will come back, which you don't want. And the lead roof, it's at the roof, it's at the cornice and tablature level, and it's at the base of the drum. It's reached the end of its useful service life, and the intent is to replace in kind. And the foundation stone, the stone itself is overall in very good condition. However, extensive biological growth, open joints. Intention is to remove the biological matter, 100% repointing and cleaning. The last major area of this project is the paving. The existing sandstone has also reached the end of its service life, and frankly, it probably reached the end of its service life a long time ago. It has not withstood the test of time. It's been determined to not be a suitable paving material in this environment. So we have the opportunity, since this has to be replaced, to go back to the original design intent of the brick herringbone pattern. So this kind of faint image on the upper left shows a detail of the original 1899 drawing showing the original brick. This shows the current stone pattern. The two images below are, I think, from the 20s. This is the North Belvedere. And this is a detail at the Esplanade facing Riverside Drive. It's the southeast corner of the Esplanade right there. And you can see the brick. So the intention is to go back and replace to the original design intent. And this would be fully coordinated with the drainage upgrade that is happening throughout the entire site, all the terraces. So just to emphasize this scope, the marble banding, that's going to be salvaged and reused and reinstalled. Selective units, which are too badly deteriorated, will be replaced in kind. And this new paving will be coordinated with the larger scope of the site drainage. And this is just this quick recap slide of summary of the key materials that we just looked at and discussed. And again, the approach is restorative. It's the repair in kind with compatible materials, salvage and reuse, and where necessary to replace in kind. And just going to leave you with this slide, and it's an opportunity to open it up with any questions or comments. And
I'll actually call for testimony first to see if we have any. Great. Chelsea, has anybody signed up for remote testimony?
There is no one signed up for remote testimony. Is anyone within the Zoom room here to testify? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing that there are no hands, we may proceed.
Thank you. There's also nobody here in person for testimony, so we can get into the discussion. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions, comments? Lori? No? Bill?
Good morning. I think this is for Sybil and Jonathan, I think. The Conservation Advisory Group, which had reviewed this, had asked a question about what kind of historical text or markers there might be to explain the site, explain the background, explain the structure itself. And I'm just wondering, I think they were looking for, I don't know if, I think they were hoping for something detailed given the problematic and long-standing nature of the site. And I just wonder if you can address that with us.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way,
Thank
this
you.
is beautiful.
Yeah, we're all very, very excited. Yeah, I think that's a very good question. The current scope of this project did not include signage, but we are looking into, through our standard historic signage program, getting signs in here when this work is complete. Typically, that's how we handle our monuments throughout the park system, is with our standard signs. So it would be something that would be developed later, but it's definitely something we are interested in doing.
I have one question, which is just generally, I think it's great that you want to reuse as much as possible of the marble that's on site and the limestone that can be salvaged. But I was questioning what are the to fortify those elements, because they're already disused, even though the ones that might be on site in pretty good shape, they've had 100 years of wear. So how are you going to level them up to the new material that you're coming in? Like, how are you going to fortify them? Like what kind of, and then fortify them and then reseal them in some sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question, and being very carefully looked at with our conservators, and we will be using a conservative approach in that if something, we're not going to be salvaging things that are going to fail again in a few years. It's really going to be stones that are still in good condition and can hold up and, will not create an issue being adjacent to new stones. So all of that is, as I mentioned, we had our team of conservators up there with ropes access, like looking at every stone. So
there's a stone by stone case. The reason why I asked this is because I got commissioned once to make a plan for like Greenwood Cemetery. And obviously in the cemetery, there are all these different stones, there are all these different timetables. They have a whole crew of people who are constantly refortifying marble and using different products. And I wonder, A, what products you plan to use to refortify the stones, so you're impregnating the stones with something to rebind them, and then what you would seal it with. And because I just, like, one of the things I'm most concerned about is the difference in age in the wear stone to stone. And when a stone takes on more moisture than the stone next to it, they break it.
yeah. Yep.
So it's like, then you've done all this, and I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure.
I thought you might think.
I think Yeah.
That is a concern of ours, and we are looking at this stone by stone. And in terms of salvage and reuse, the most obvious one is the granite steps. I mean, those are in great condition. So unless it ends up being an issue because of code that it has to be replaced, those are certainly being replaced. Same with the limestone. I mean, those are in great condition. An area that we do anticipate more significant Dutchman than in the last 1960 project is at the entablature level. Let me just go back to. This is a close-up of that. These missing pieces are previous failed Dutchmen. And it's been determined at those overhanging projections, the Dutchmen that were previously installed are too small to be safe. So realistically, we will be, where there is a deteriorated overhanging modillion, that will be replaced with a new Dutchman, because that is your next 60-year repair. Because as you correctly pointed out, the compatibility issue, this is a weathered material. You put a new stone next to it, it's going to accelerate the level it wants to fail. So that is something we're very aware of that happened and failed from the last project that we are improving on for this project. And safety is a #1 concern, but also the integrity. This is a very holistic approach.
But when it was built, nobody would have been sealing stuff. You know what I mean? So now, what I'm trying to get at is like, whether or not
We're
there would be an approach, like when it was built, no one would have conceived of sealing a stone to make them behave at the same level.
Correct. Although in the 30s, they apparently sealed it in paraffin. There's a history of doing strange things to this monument. So we're really trying to be stone focused. I don't know if that helped answer.
It totally did. I mean, not an answer, but you're in
An approach at least.
you're in the- Thank you.
Please.
I don't know who I'm directing this to, but first of all, it's a great project. Incredibly important that the city keep up its monuments and its public spaces, and it's great that you're doing both the inside and the outside. And I'm just wondering about public access, even if it's through tours, but if we're spending this much money on something, particularly the inside, and I support that, we absolutely should. I think this is brilliant on all levels. I would just want to make sure that there's some public access and the people of the city of New York, even if it's through arranged tours, can see the beauty of the inside once it's restored.
Yes, thanks. That's a very good point. Everyone does want to get inside this monument. I will say the inside of this, it's much smaller than you think. It's a very small space. But there is an interest, open house New York type tours, and it won't be accessible as part of this project. So we'd have to make accommodations for accessibility on a temporary basis to bring people in, but it is a desire to, once it's restored, on a limited basis, get people to see the inside. It is quite spectacular, and unfortunately it can't be open all the time.
Sure.
But, and we did talk about accessibility for it, but the intervention to the monument would have been, extraordinary. So it would not be made accessible.
Thank you.
And you're talking about how much, like once a year, twice a year, once a month?
I would say Memorial Day and
Yeah, Memorial Day sounds right.
historically Memorial Day and Open House New York But I think once the project is completed, there's going to be so much more interest in it, then we're gonna want to open it on a much more regular basis than that,
So quarterly.
at least,
Okay.
yes.
Question, how was it originally accessed? What was it, sort of, I mean, I know there are many originals here, but during different restorations, was it ever open? Just curious. Like what its intent was, because it's a small
Believe-
space.
I don't believe we have any evidence that it was ever open on a regular basis or even an intermittent basis. It's only in recent years for Open House New York, in fact, that that's been done. Right. As Sybil described, the interior, at least the dimensions of the interior, are rather small comparatively, as you see, its grandiosity on the exterior, although as one gazes up, it's spectacular. I think we will try. Again, we'll see what the level of interest is and respond to that as we do at all sites. That goes through the interpretation too, that was mentioned earlier.
As a point of comparison for the prison ship monument in Fort Greene Park, I don't think that's ever been open to the public.
I think they occasionally do Halloween tours
They do.
of the crypt.
I wanted to go.
Of the
I wanted to go
crib.
Now I know.
But in that case, the elevator was removed. There was an elevator. It was
Yeah.
removed in 1949 from that monument. There is a staircase, but it's largely used for utilitarian purposes.
But they never let anybody in the crypt where the prison ship.
In recent years, I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. That's managed by our boroughs in collaboration with whatever staffing levels we have of rangers and things like that. And we'll certainly make this particular site that's in front of you on the screen, give it increased attention after this restoration and work with our interpretive, people who do interpretive tours to see what level of access we can make.
So when you're talking about how it's small, what's the capacity? 20 people, 10 people?
10.
10. Okay, great. So tiny.
Maximum 10.
Yeah.
Okay, any last thoughts? Okay, just to quickly summarize, as Jimmy said, we find this restoration and renovation to be brilliant on all levels. I want to compliment the team on what it seems to me was like a long-term mindset in terms of like, you're not calling attention to yourselves or this process, but rather thinking long-term about how this can persist for the next 100 years or whatever. We really appreciate that. Also appreciate your attention to the materials, as Ken Seth raised, and the aging process. And finally, it really encouraged you to, as you are already doing, collaborate with Open House and other organizations that can give access to it. So with that, I'll take a roll call vote on item number 29001, preliminary review of the conservation of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Ken Seth Armstead,
Approve.
Isabel Casilla,
Approve.
Lori Hawkinson,
Approve.
Bill Heinzen,
Approve.
Carrie Maloney,
Approve.
Beryl Tisch,
Approved.
Jimmy Van Bramer.
Approve.
I also approve, so let the record show we are all in favor of approval, and we congratulate you on this excellent work. Thank you so much. Okay, so should we wait a minute? Yeah.
No, I mean, I was gonna find, it's a nice piece of. Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Good? Okay, thank you. We'll now begin the committee meeting with the conceptual review of the reconstruction of New Lots Branch Library and Library Plaza adjacent to Sankofa Park at 655 New Lots Avenue, Brooklyn. We will not hear public testimony or vote on this project today, as it is at conceptual stage. And you can begin when ready, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
My name is Karen Fairbanks. I'm here with Marble Fairbanks Architects and really pleased to be here with our colleagues from Mass Design and EKLA. And I think we should let everybody just say who they are and then we'll start the presentation. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. Jonathan Evans, principal with Mass Design Group.
Good morning. This is Eleonora Zilianti from Elizabeth Kennedy Landscape Architect. I'm a senior landscape architect.
Good morning. I'm Demario Walker Brown, designer at Mass Design Group.
And I'm Jason Roberts, director at Marble Fairbanks, and I will take it away. New Lots Library is located in the neighborhood of East New York in the easternmost part of Brooklyn. Here you can see the existing library, or the site of the existing library is adjacent to the north to Sankofa Park and surrounded by public transit via the 3 and the B15, which we have a bus stop right out in front of the building. The site's kind of an architect's dream, as it's the only building on this large block, and so by nature it's very visible from all directions, which kind of drove some of the ideas of the initial concepts of the design. You'll also notice that across the street from the library is the New Lots Reformed Church and Cemetery, which, as we get into the history of this site and of this neighborhood, will become significant. The existing library is built partially on an African burial ground. That burial ground was acknowledged in 2013 and renamed Sankofa Park and is undergoing reconstruction as we speak. I believe this was presented to PDC a few years ago. Our landscape concept looks to kind of connect the new Sankofa Park layout with our lot on the bottom here. When we get into the new plans, you'll be able to see how that connection is made. But there's a reinternment in the new park to the north that will be visible from our gathering circles and our memorial circles. Yep, out in the site there. And the site is really designed to kind of sweep you into the entrance on the south side of the building. The library's in a residential district, so height's regulated. We're in an R5 zone, and we're looking to push the building as far west on the site as possible to avoid disturbing the burial ground. Just a couple of views of the existing library from the street. You can see here, looking down New Lots Avenue toward the front of the existing library building. The entrance to the existing library is also off of New Lots Avenue, right in front of that B15 bus stop. And then the view on the right is taken of the front of the library to the east. You'll notice that the library, the existing library has a tarp on the parapet. We did an extensive initial feasibility study to see if we could keep the existing library, but it became very clear through community outreach and sort of the deferred maintenance at this library, plus programmatically of not building on a burial ground, would make more sense to tear down the existing library and build new. Here's a view looking up Schenck Avenue. This is the western side street. There's a lot of really great community farms and community art in the neighborhood that we're really looking forward to working with in this new project. Again, some views along the north side of the library. This library is a regional hub, so it stores a lot of the equipment, snow blowers, things like that, that other branch libraries come to this library to use. So they have a maintenance shed along this northern corridor. In the proposed library, we're looking to use this as a service area as well. And then looking from the roof to the housing complex to the east and the existing parking lot, this is where our new plaza will take place. The existing building, this is the basement plan, has a large 100-person auditorium in the basement. And you can see how it clips the corner of this burial ground. In the demolition process, we hope to maintain some of the existing foundations and build off of that. One, to reduce our embodied carbon on the project, but also to ensure that we don't do any more disruption to the burial ground than absolutely necessary. The main floor plan is generally adult reading material. Again, you enter in off the south side with a staff parking lot to the right. And then the second floor is the Adult Learning Center. This is, again, very specific to this library and very specific to the regional branch in serving adults who need to take tests, need to learn to read, so on and so forth. So there's really Brooklyn Public Library is co-inhabiting with a branch library and this Adult Learning Center and the roof. Again, the existing library built in the 1950s, a lot of brick, a lot of stone panels, very insular. As time went on, the building became a much more closed off from the exterior. Has some views when you get up high, but not a whole lot. And we hope to remedy this in our new project. Section cut through the existing building. Do you want to? No. Okay. All right.
All right, thanks, Jason. And probably not the most provocative image, but we'll start with the basement plan of the new building. I think certainly we wanted to leverage the existing footprint as best as we could. Put a lot of the largely back of house office space down here. I think one of the big things to note, though, is we are acknowledging the African burial ground location, trying to sort of make that a moment where we have our gathering space, their auditorium space, and also we're looking at opportunities to actually create some connection from grade visually down there. Moving up level 1, this is really where the most transformative impact is happening on the project. I think we're really excited to create a library that feels welcoming, that feels open, and that feels connected to the place. I think comparing this to the existing library plan, the idea that this actually serves in some ways as a building in the round, that it is approachable and engaging from all sides, I think is really exciting. And I think as Jason mentioned before, understanding the sort of form of Sankofa Park and thinking about how we can, again, formally create connectivity between the two projects. I think one thing in terms of access through the landscape to the building, we are very much intended to make a very prescribed intentional journey through the outdoor programming space and celebration space and the meditative space and have that be under library control. But, you know, we understand that the perimeter along Barbie Street, the planting is low so that we do have the ability to sort of see through the space. But again, looking at the building as a whole, again, the sort of goal here was to make something that felt very welcoming, very open, and sort of very transparent to really create this kind of civic anchor that feels rooted in its place. Again, moving up, this is level 2. You can start to see the beginnings of the sort of the veil, the scrim around the facade. Again, we'll look at that more in the elevations and the renderings, but that has performative benefits as well in terms of daylighting, solar heat glare, and whatnot for the actual space, as well as creating a sort of very significant presence in the neighborhood. Again, so going back, level 2 again, children's space, meeting rooms as well. Again, the idea that we're really trying to allow for activity along the perimeter as much as possible, so be able to really see that library activity. Level 3, this is where the building steps back, and we have a rooftop deck, and then the ALC up here on level 3, and then the roof plan. Again, I think what we're really excited about, one of the things we're really excited about on this project is this idea of the veil, the idea of this sort of crafted facade scrim that, again, as I mentioned before, has performative aspects in terms of, again, solar heating, daylighting, but also evokes a sense of craft, a sense of sort of warmth and texture that oftentimes, we don't always see in contemporary sort of sleek buildings. We really wanted to use this as an opportunity to celebrate craft, celebrate the culture, and celebrate the sort of spirit of joy that many in the community want to see here in making this library happen. And I think one thing you can see in these elevation drawings too, again, is that we are pulling that datum up, lifting the veil, as we called it, to really allow, again, the ground floor to be really transparent, and porous to the neighborhood. Again, the sort of other views, again, as I mentioned before, this really exists as a building in the round. So we wanted to make sure that, there isn't a front door, so to speak. Well, I mean, there is a front door, but there isn't only a front, right? That we sort of experience this form from New Lots Avenue as well as from Sankofa Park.
And subway.
And the subway, exactly. That's a great point, yes. Again, sort of building sections, I think one thing that's sort of generative on the inside of the building is this idea of a palaver, this sort of gathering space. So we certainly have are trying to sort of focus and anchor activities around central moments. So we have like a central stair moving through the building, and again, really kind of keeping the facades open into the inside. And so again, this is the view from across the street, from across New Lots Avenue. I think, again, one of the things that we're really excited about is really the sort of the warmth and again, the sense of scale, the sense of craft that you sort of get with the baguettes woven together, kind of creating this tapestry along the facade, and this idea of the library sort of glowing behind it. Again, this is stepping back off of the roof terrace on level at the level of the ALC. Again, being able to actually sort of be proximate and close to this facade and this sort of space between where the building steps back and that screen. And this is an exciting moment here. Again, we're up off in the air off of New Lots Avenue, library on the left, the sort of plaza in the foreground here. Again, I think what we're really excited about is the cohesive design language between the building, the landscape, our landscape, and Sankofa Park. Exactly. Thanks, Jason. And again, being able to sort of come up into that space. One of the things we are looking at too is how we think about the sort of assembly of the baguettes, potentially looking at moments to actually honor specific names or sort of phrases that people in the community have deemed worthy of celebrating. So looking at those sort of moments there to sort of see a couple of bronze members there to play with the texture to sort of evoke that reading. From
the train and from down the street, it's one thing when you get up close and kind of these inscriptions. On the baguettes themselves, it's another. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, again, just to sort of talk more about this, again, I think we really wanted to pay homage to this idea of craft and this idea of warmth and color and vibrancy. This is something that a lot of the engagement that the library has done with the community has really resonated as a space of remembrance, a space of joy, and a sort of connection. I think we wanted to really sort of evoke those sensibilities and how we're sort of creating this facade. I think it is not meant to be a literal kind of basket, but more so just really sort of use some of those as a point of departure to create this this sort of element of architecture. And I think with that, yeah, happy to open up to conversation.
Okay. So this is conceptual, so there's no opportunity for public testimony today. So commissioners, questions, comments? Lori.
Hi. Very fun project. Thank you. And lots of work and design work and research. So, but you're in DD, beginning DD. So when we say conceptual, you're like, things are, the train's moving rapidly. Yeah. Right.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, I want to go through because we had a number of questions. So I just wanted to try to touch on those, if that's okay. So, I had a question. So first I'll start with the rain screen. And I just was looking at the elevations and I know you submitted this like X number of weeks, a month, whatever, like everybody wants everything way in advance. But I know, I'm just curious about how you're studying this elevation. Because not this one, but let's say the east and the north, kind of where you look into the garden, that's where I'm, because I understand you want to have a sunscreen on the south, west, and east, but you've got view to the east and north, right? Just if I get my orientation right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
So what is it? So you showed me on the roof what it's like to be up there and look through, but what is it like to be on that second level where you have that great reading room and then you have those meeting rooms? What's it like to be in there and look out? Because those seem like great opportunities. And that's what I look at in the plan. I'm, wow, this is fantastic. I have all this open space next to me and potentially light. So how do I see it? A, and then, I mean, is it really a rain screen? That's a question mark in my head as an architect. And then, not that I'm questioning your technical ability or anything, I'm just wondering like, and so, and then I wondered, do you want me to keep asking or do you want to answer?
Keep going.
Either, I mean.
If they're all in the same sort of lineup.
Okay, so then there's the legacy module, so I don't.
Okay.
Understand where I see those, like how do I read those and where, because they sound really interesting, because I want to know more. About what you're doing. And then I was looking at the sections, because you have the two sections, one through the double height space in the auditorium, but I'm really interested in that north-south section that I don't see. And I know that that's not our purview, but I'm thinking of that nice big auditorium we had before, and I'm wondering how does that work? In the section of an auditorium to have it go low and then boom up at, I think that's the stage end. Right?
Yeah, and so.
Oh, okay. So, just, I didn't see that section, so I don't know, we probably didn't ask for that and we should have asked for that. Right. So my
It's
my
there.
mistake there.
This one?
Yeah, so
Or
that,
which one?
there it is. Okay, so that's north-south.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that is through the auditorium.
The
auditorium is
dividable also though, Lori.
Oh, it is?
There is a dividing wall.
In the plan.
There is a dividing wall in plan.
Okay,
So there's a, there's a two-story part, half of it's 2 stories and half of it's 1 story.
so there you go. There is
Yeah.
that double height. So that has a big X over it that I
Right.
can't see. So that means double height. Everybody here. And then, that double height, so I can't see. Where can I look from that, the space here, the African, what does that say down here? There.
Special African.
Yeah, so from there I could look out. Is
Yeah,
that right?
you could stand here and look
And
down
look-
into the auditorium
Can
space.
I see over or not? Like, what
Yeah.
are those view corridors like? I mean, I know maybe it's not my business
No.
on the inside, but these are real.
Transparent at the
Mhm.
whole base,
Yeah.
all the way around. It's transparent all the way around here.
Right.
So you can see through.
I can see through and over.
Right through this.
Yeah, sure.
I'm so sorry. We're gonna get there. So you have to, so this is all transparent glass all the way around the whole base
At the
until,
base,
until the
right.
core.
Okay, great.
So
Perfect.
everything's visible and that's
So if
really
I had a
important.
view of that, I would see.
You can see, you can
See
see
people out there.
through,
I see
you
people out
know, the idea is to really be connected and also down here at this lower level where
Mhm.
we really have a wall that's adjacent to the burial. That, seeing that wall and seeing the view of the landscape, the trees
Right.
above is really important actually to
So
the project.
that, I don't know if anybody cares about that, presenting the project that way, but I think that would be really great.
Yeah.
Because right now we just see it as the objet,
Right.
but we don't understand how it's actually operating in a really strong way in terms of that landscape and the importance of that landscape
Right.
and what you've allowed me to see.
Totally understand that. And
Yeah.
that's, and that whole journey on the interior journey through the
Right.
building and all the way through the spaces and landing up at the Adult Learning Center is actually part of the whole story as well, the narrative.
Yeah, I
of the
think-
site. I don't know,
I-
Jonathan, if you want to talk about this.
I was just going to talk about the legacy markers really quick because, yeah, those are a part of that journey that Karen had mentioned with with
Yeah.
moments within the library. We know that if you're going to the library, you're not going to follow one path in the library, but we have these significant moments of of reflection. Right now, it's being a kind of a placeholder of a bronze material. So we have inlaid.
Pointing at some of the
Oh, the
Some of
bands.
these,
Mhm.
some of these baguettes
Yeah.
are intended to be bronze as opposed to the terracotta or the colored piece of
So
members.
that has information.
And the bronze ones from the inside, the idea is it will have text on them inscribed. And so it's something you read from the inside.
Great.
How? Can you say more about that?
Yeah.
You want to talk about Jonathan?
No, go ahead.
If you could just say more, I'm just curious how am I only reading that if I'm stepping out, if I'm inside?
When you're inside.
We're inside, so I think the intent is to have that extra layer of information to your question earlier about what do you see, what is your experience of the veil from the inside? I mean, I think, yes, we very much are intending to frame out views that are key and important from all of the meeting rooms and all of the reading room spaces, but also having these moments of actually being able to sort of read that individual piece of the baguette. Again, we're hoping to sort of work with the community to understand what markers we want to signify there, but actually having that layer of information on the facade to become more engaging.
So they're like diagonal captions as you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the idea that you're embedding language in the striations. I don't know why the term baguette is bringing me along.
Yeah, it's
That seems odd and francophile in a weird way, but that's fine. But the other part of it is more that I understand embedding language in it. And I think weaving is language. So like a South
Yeah.
American Hebrew is like, it's weaving, but it's also arithmetic.
Yeah.
So, it does not cuckoo, sir. You'll be saved that. But I'm really concerned about the project in a more conceptual way, how it will be taken by people who won't have seen your brief denoting that it's a weaving. My initial impression of it is that because it is regular at the bottom and irregular at the top, that it will read as a crown. But that's a different kind of symbol for a neighborhood and in a republic, right? So people have common literacy for visuals, right?
Yeah.
They have a common visual literacy. And I think it will read as a crown, which isn't a negative thing, but isn't necessarily what you're trying to convey. And the second part that I would put on this is that for drama, because it is even on the bottom, and then even at the top where it changes, it's still quite regular in the way that it changes. There's a sort of pattern to it that you miss some of the drama of the aspect of a woven thing that doesn't have a regular ending or beginning place. Thirdly, I want you, like when you originally proposed it with a lot more color, I would have asked, well, how did you come to those colors?
Yeah.
I quite like the dynamism of the less regular form at the top, but then because the object doesn't kneel toward the bottom, it doesn't read as weaving, it doesn't read as basket. So the concept that you were inspired by baskets and the woven doesn't carry through because of the elements that you're using are quite stiff, as opposed to basket, which is quite flexible.
Yeah.
So I challenge you to go back to it and redraw. Like I started to think about it and just draw on the screen and play with it a bit more to get more drama out of it. And I found that if it had more of I'll show you a drawing. So like at the base, there are moments where you could bring it to touch the ground, but then that also indicates to people that it's literally physically grounded, that it's not above them, right? And the crown element, it makes it feel distant from the way that we act in a republic where we have equal access in this odd way. And then the other thing is that I know there might be an issue with it being climbed on if it touches the ground, but there you have to make this trade-off for drama between actual line and imagined line. So there's some compromise I feel like needs to happen so people can read it as this in-process thing, which I think you were implying that it's in process. And that the building itself needs to kind of kneel toward the history. And right now, it feels like a fence to that history. And that I think people will read negatively. Does that make? Oh, but I just wanted to know.
It's on the back end.
Sure.
I'm just saying that the connection to the park, the connection to the house, people will read it in a general way. I wondered if you.
So I know you have a response, Jonathan. I want to know, I know Jimmy would like to say something about that same matter. Would you as well, Lori? Before we move on to something.
Say the baguette is a technical term, or terracotta, that's what they call it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it's from the company that makes it. That's right.
Just because it hits Ken Seth as francophone, but. Yeah, no, yes.
So. Now ask other
And we
questions.
will come to you in a moment and you'll.
No, yeah.
Go.
I'm trying to remember all of the questions, but okay.
So I just want to say I toured the existing branch with former council member Inez Barron, who I know for whom this was an incredibly important project. And this is transformational from what exists now and what has existed. I also know that there was sort of extensive community input and feedback. Y'all didn't talk about that too much, but particularly in light of some of the things that you've heard from other commissioners, I would be interested to know to what extent the community feedback helped inform what in fact you presented here, because maybe the community has actually asked for some of the things that we're looking at.
All right, yeah, I can kind of weave all three of those together. I'm gonna go for it. All right. I think actually that's a great jumping off point, because I think, yes, to your comment, we've done with partnership with the library, a few years of actual meaningful engagement with the community. We actually did a video tour and actually got over close to 100 interviews with residents and community members about what does the neighborhood mean to them? What does this site mean to them? And what are the things that we want to sort of acknowledge and honor in terms of public memory with this project? And I think this idea of a connection to sort of an African past is something that is very kind of visceral and desired by the community. So I think we wanted to understand how can we do that, uplift this, create a place of joy in the landscape, which was kind of our kind of call to action for the design. So that is what very much kind of led to and fueled this idea of again, evoking color and craft and texture. And we don't want to have something that felt too sleek, too kind of foreign. So I think that was very much the sort of driver to create kind of the soul of this piece. I think as we talk about how this building works in the landscape, this idea of there isn't a front or a back. Well, I'll say this, I think we are evolving. I think this feedback is helpful. And again, I think we, as part of the next mission, will be able to address it more fully. I will say though, we very much didn't want, if you're looking at this from New Lots versus the two side streets, to see, oh, that's the back, because it's fundamentally different. So I think that was very much why we wanted to make sure that we lifted the veil. And again, we also wanted to evoke this in our piece around lifting the veil of ignorance. So I think we wanted to very much have the ground floor feel transparent. Having said that, right now, obviously you can sort of see it's a pretty clean line there at the bottom. I think we can certainly play with that. And that's something we can kind of keep working on. And I think the idea at the top similarly was to sort of create this thing that felt unfinished. I'm actually not put off by multiple readings of this. I think that's kind of what art should do. And I think certainly as part of, I'll leave it there. I think certainly we don't want to sort of tell somebody exactly what they think this should feel like to them. But I think, so that doesn't necessarily concern me too much if somebody sees it as a crown versus a basket. But again, I think that's something we can keep testing and playing with. I'm trying to get back to your first question. I'm sorry.
About the views out, and I think
Yeah,
that's something we're
Yeah.
still studying this, and we actually very much agree that this should invite certain views. We want to really highlight the connection to the park through the views up here. The whole second floor has some really great opportunities to look out through it, and we're trying to study that right now. We've been working pretty closely with the entire design team, with our engineers, Atelier 10, Silliman, and Front, on all of those kinds of questions about the structure, the scale, the connections, the possibility for how many of these long pins are part of the Vale. So those are all in progress and being studied. So we really appreciate your comments because those are concerns of ours as well.
Also, I want to apologize for drawing on your drawing. I went to art school. I didn't go to architecture school. I'm an artist. I'm just saying, I'm a sculptor and I can't say everything, but I can draw almost anything. So just directionally that I drew. So, but I do respect the work that you're doing, and I do want you to acknowledge that, like, regardless of their multiple readings, I feel like people will come to the space and feel it as democratic or undemocratic, and they'll feel either it's a crown to put on, or that they're all wearing this, or it's exclusionary. And that's where I'm getting into the meat of it with you. When you redraw it, I'm concerned about like that the drama of it as it sits across from this park where they're the interred remains of our forefathers. How does it cohere? And I'm really concerned about when you look onto it from this, whether there's that open view rather than a closed off or like, what does it mean when you have an interrupted view of your past and your history? And so that's something to interrogate as designers as you're moving forward. And it's certainly not easy, and I'm glad it's you and not me, because that's what keeps me up as I'm making things that live as sculpture permanently out in the world.
Just one more on that. I mean, as you, I think the kind of text on the baguettes is very interesting and would be compelling for users of the structure. But I would really encourage, and I'm sure you're already doing this, to study how those text moments relate to the views. Because there's yeah, no, not at all. I was just gonna say, because there's a kind of a uniformity in the renderings now that it wouldn't have to be that way. There could be broken pieces of the basket,
So to kind of piggyback off of some of the things that were mentioned earlier, in the community engagement meetings that we had, the community has shared how they didn't necessarily want to focus on the past and the terror that has been done. They wanted to acknowledge it, but they more so wanted to celebrate the joy, the Black joy, kind of similar to what Jonathan and Jason had mentioned earlier. And within that, we had a series of steps to kind of move from trauma to celebrating Black joy. And one of those, in regards to how people interact, how people experience the building, is through these 6 different steps. And so that is then related to different elements within the building. And so on the 2nd floor, you're fully embraced by the Vale. And within that, you're able to have this kind of one-to-one scale interaction, this visual connection with these legacy markers where these quotes would be. And then on top of that, our conversations that we've had with A10, understanding where view could be framed, how to kind of address the shading and the lighting issues, all of that's being taken into consideration in regards to how we kind of create that visual connection, how people then kind of look out onto this burial ground through this veil, through seeing these legacy markers with these quotes. And on top of that, we're also trying to think about how do we be sure to include the diversity of the community, because East New York is a proud community to celebrate who they are. And we're trying to also think about how that then ties into this veil and how we're telling this story.
So the veil markers, language won't be just on the outside, also be on the inside.
Yes. And just to sort of emphasize something that Mario said that gets one of your earlier comments, I think there is an entire sort of spatial narrative of moving through the space and telling stories through the procession, through the entry, up through the building or down. I think that's one of the things that understanding kind of the purview of PDC, we didn't kind of get into here, but I think certainly we can bring that to the next conversation to help inform how the evolution and the sort of form of the facade and of the building is taking shape.
But this is my thing in that I do this, I make sculpture that lives permanently outside with people, and they have to read it without my backstory. They have to get to my backstory from my breadcrumbs. And I think that what you guys have to do is bring us those markers so that we can really start to, it's like stair by stair, so that people who want to go deep into the history have a history to go back into, and people who want to go deep into the future. And that's the sort of push and pull, which I admire about the architectural element about this, that you can do that, but you haven't done that as yet. And it is a dramatic thing. And I think because you've made it so regularized, you've taken some of the drama out of it and also some of the joy out of it. And I want to see that back. Because when I looked at the picture of the inspiration of that basket, that I could see why you want to riff off that. And I think you've pasteurized it, for lack of a better term. Also, Francophile, I can't believe it. I did.
Yeah, I hear that, and I think that's something that we can certainly present at the next meeting. But I think a lot of what you're saying is very much our ethos and part of what we're doing, and we can sort of show that more fully next time.
There are probably some really key moments between that line between inside and outside, and where you're really, exploring those edges and those relationships that are part of our story that are not probably presented here, because there's so much about the interior experience, but I think that might be helpful.
Yeah.
So, like,
And are just one little bit on that, are the terracotta elements in diameter? They appear to be right now.
Yeah.
So that's just a question. You don't have to, you can.
Yes.
do whatever you're studying it. I don't.
I mean, we're actually working with, as Karen mentioned, front, someone and structural design, but also with, directly with some contractors to figure out how we're actually gonna build this thing. So this is all in evolving conversation.
But I guess my question is, what do you want, right? Because they always push back. They don't be those guys.
Oh,
yeah, right now,
Yeah.
we
They're all-
want. Yeah.
I just want to
We're using
re-emphasize that.
No, understood.
I know, not their inspiration is basket.
You want?
Yeah.
I just have a couple more points.
Yeah.
Just to go into another, unless we want to stay on this guy.
No, let's
Finish on the architecture.
Then we'll move to.
Yeah, then we'll move
To the open
okay, so I have a
space.
question Very quick, where are the in-ground skylights? You talked about the
Yep.
in-ground skylights, and then I have a question about, probably Isabel as well, but access to the outdoor programming celebrations. Those are the skylights. They're on the west side, and they go into
Staff workspace.
staff, so they're above that. Then the outdoor programming celebration space access, how, we said that. I think.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
do we,
can-
I know I did a library, those librarians do not want the kids to go running outside of the park, I know that. So, but some people can go, right? Not just emergency egress.
Yeah,
One second, if I could, before we move on to the outdoor space, the site and the kind of circulation in the structure, does everyone finish their comments on the screen and that the structure itself?
Well, I have one more comment about, just a question about the mass timber, because I see through in your rendering that they're doing this, but I don't really know what they're doing. I mean, and maybe, again, it's not my business, because I can't talk about the inside, but it is. And I know it's really hard to design mass timber, make it look like something, because then everything else is up there and exposed. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about that. And then my final question was, where does the library go? We're waiting for this one.
I'll speak to the first one. I'm really excited about that. We were actually awarded a grant through the Wood Institute, National Forestry Institute, as part of the PEC program to bring mass timber to New York City, try to figure that out. And so we were one of 7 projects that got kind of like hands-on. They ran at the studio and architecture studio, so you had office hours with the DOB, and also Woodworks, and someone that's actually on 3 of the 7 projects that the agency supported. And so we've been really excited about wood, from a carbon standpoint, from a biophilic standpoint, from the idea of this kilometer as a gathering space in which important conversations can be made.
Tomorrow, did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Basically,
But yeah, the wood structures were important. That's working with, really great. That's another one that we're looking to get designers to sign up pretty early so we can really make this work.
Because it looks like it's very important from here.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so. There's no more.
Yeah, so I'm going over the plan. We'll get first. So these two columns here kind of form the centers of these two radii, which we see as being kind of those that allow inspiration. And so we have coming into these columns 8 main girders that carry majority of the majority of the structure. Really beautifully designed. If you're interested, including in the next presentation. But that was kind of the concept that drove the geometric form of the.
I mean, I think it'd be great to know more about it, just because I think it's such an exemplary use of that structural problem.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, I'm just curious, but maybe I'm heard.
Yeah, we just presented the structural ideas and those renderings of those joints at the Center for Architecture, the Mass Timber Studio final review, just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. So those have been kind of publicly acknowledged, but we haven't shown the whole project in that context yet. Yeah, we could have to.
Great.
Any last thoughts on the structure?
Okay, so let's move to the site.
To open space, and this is a perfect slide. I was hoping, Eleonora, if you could walk us a little bit more in detail through the open space. I'm interested in understanding the circulation across it, its relationship to the building, the types of programs you see taking place, and specifically how this design responds to Sankofa Park and the memorial. Just because we only have 2 visuals about the open space, so it's a little bit, I don't want to interpret.
Well, I think I anticipate before in the first slide, the axis and geometry that relate especially to the Sankofa Park, where the entire open space is started. So the relation are geometrical and formal and visual. So from the building, the access to the space, the intent is mostly to create 2 spaces that are more intimate and in relation with the library itself, rather than being way too open to the rest of the neighborhood in sense of moving and access. There is the primary access from the street from New Lots Avenue is a celebrity entrance to the space. And then the artist, I guess, can probably fulfill with more detail the way the access is designed and has this, the wall on the side of the entrance will be inscribed, and there will be symbolism and relating more on nature than, but the intent is to create also a space that has a sense of healing and cleansing, and the planting reflect this whole intent to in 2 different ways. One has the low planting of the lower grass that would be very uniform and leaving open the view from the inside of the and sorry, should I point, but I'm able. So the grass, I don't know if we have another color plan too, or no, not the moment, right?
Yep, the one that doesn't have trees is the grass, basically.
Right.
The meadow.
So the grasses is in this portion, and they're all around the building on this side as well. And then we have this solar forest, sort of micro forest idea to create a little more sense of enclosure. And when we use the terms microforest, it's just a dense planting of trees. They will develop pretty well on mostly on the outside because they're very fully exposed to the different orientation, and probably the one more in the inside of the forest will be having more or less developed, but they will definitely create this sense of density. And at the same time, the berms that they are formed on this edge, they have a maximum of between 30 inches and 48 inches. So they will leave unobstruct the view from the Barbie Street, from New Lots. So there's a full visibility of the space from inside, from outside. The central space has more a flexible outdoor programming for different type of events. And so it's a larger paved area. And then the smaller area has a more intimate feeling where people, there's a one bench. People can see.
Is that the only seat in the entire area, that one bench?
At the moment, yes.
And why is that?
But we're still studying that. In addition to the things that we're studying, are what is exactly inscribed on the burn walls, as well as how we connect back to the library. So that was the request by the library as well.
The library does want to connect.
Yeah.
We've seen, as Laurie mentioned, a lot of projects where libraries don't want to connect to the open space, which is one of our main questions. So that's not reflected right now, but there is an interest to connect.
There's an interest for us to study that and what the
Okay.
impact would be on the library if we did that. So
Okay.
they are interested in that, but right now the control is all from the street side.
Okay.
It's very complicated for me to say this, and I feel this connection is broken. Like the building and the park next to it. And, you know, Sankofa is a Twi language word, and the Adinkra symbol is this duck with the head turned back, right? And I feel like that when you're inside the fence, inside this adjacent to Sankofa Park, and you can't actually go back, that actually, it just physically gives you the antithesis of the name. And that's because you've got this beautiful flow inside it. You can flow into it and it's circular and it's beautiful, and then you can't get out. That you can see the marker from inside, but you can't walk to it, is fundamentally against the idea of Sankofa, that you can return to it. You have to hop the fence.
I mean, I think it's understandable. There needs to be a fence because there's separate spaces, separate management,
Yes.
separate ownerships. But I agree with Kenseth that the way the layout works, it's not maximizing that relationship to Sankofa Park, which could be extremely powerful if the topography frames a view corridor, if the tree layout frames a view corridor. Right now, from your main celebration space, you would need to almost be at the very edge between the meditation space and the celebration space to get that relationship. And I think that's a missed opportunity, especially if we're thinking about creating a densely planted buffer. That's a great moment to create an opening that is meaningful, where maybe these two ovals rotate a little bit more inward to create a moment of juxtaposition where you then open up the views. Because you're speaking about this journey, and I like the idea of the wall. I think that's a beautiful idea to speak about the history of the site, but it feels a little bit long. It feels like if you don't know where you're going, you may at some point be like, should I keep going? Am I supposed to be in this space? Is this space inviting to me? So I'm wondering if we think about that relationship and that journey in the same way as you're describing the interior of the building and the movement through the building as revealing vistas and history. Can the open space more strongly do that? Can these shapes more strongly orient you through that? So when you come out of that long journey from the street onto the space to this threshold of planting, you actually see the monument at the end of that threshold, which right now you don't do.
think a little bit about the Highline Spur. When you get, it's a very similar design idea. You get through that moment between the curtain walls, through that canopy of trees, and in the very end, the sculpture is revealed because the sculpture is perfectly placed on that point of axis, right? I think if that oval shifts a little bit, if that line shifts a little bit, you can start getting there. And then I would also play with the trees in the same way. That main tree in the center, this one, it's blocking that view, right? So if this moves a little and points you there, and this moves a little and points you there, you can have a very, very powerful moment, which is what you're describing, but the plan is not yet showing. I would also urge you to explain in the next round a little bit more what you mean by the microforest. Like microforest is actually a technical term. It's the Miyawaki afforestation method, which is not what you're showing here. Right? So if you want to call it a thicket, if you want to call it something that creates a sense of enclosure, that frames views in a particular way, that's one thing. A microforest needs to be an actual 200 square foot enclosed area with baby saplings that grow, and they need a particular management that is really not what you're presenting here. So just be careful about that. I also, oval shapes and circular shapes are very tricky in public space because they lead to these tiny triangles that are tripping hazards that people step over. No one's gonna, we see this all the time. They're not gonna wanna do that. They're gonna do that, right? So I think with the topography and with the paving, you can still explore these geometries, but I would urge you to cut those planters short, because they're just not going to survive well, right? So how do you play? But you could keep those geometries with a line on the paving, a scored line, an embedded piece of stone, something that, again, directs your views to the monument, and maybe even brings some of the facade detailing in terms of colors, in terms of inscribed words onto this. So you keep that geometry, but it's not physical there. The last thing I would say is I am very interested in understanding the connection between the library and this space, again, because it's so internal. And I wanted you to explain it because I understand now that you do want it to be internal, but as a public space, it still needs to feel inviting and safe and still have clear visibility throughout. So how do we balance those two? And how do we make sure this space is usable when there isn't an event? The lack of furniture is very curious to me. Because even though libraries, we've seen many that do wide open spaces for events, they still have some sort of edge furniture or movable furniture or something that still makes it inviting on the day-to-day. And I worry without that, this space may only be used a couple of times a year. And you're creating such a powerful narrative. You kind of do want the community to enter here and have that experience, even if they're not going into the building. So I think we need to figure something else out that this space can serve the community in the same way as the library serving the community.
This is not that. This is very low to the ground. So your comment about being able to see where you're going, I think it would be an issue, but I think the orientation is very good.
Just remember, meadow planting does grow, right? So if you have a berm that's 3 feet tall and you have grasses that are 3 feet tall, that's your view corridor.
I just wanted to follow up on the last thing that Isabel said, because I was gonna ask about it as well. Because you mentioned at one point that BPL would have control over this piece of the project. And I wonder, I assume that just means for programming purposes, right? Or because they're not really technically in control of that, right?
This is their site.
Sorry.
Right. So then will it be gated off by BPL?
That is the idea. Yes. Bill wants to be able to control
So that's an important distinction, right? So this is not a public park at all. This is Brooklyn Public Library's library and their garden, which they will control access to 100% of the time.
They will control it. I think, we could look at how BPL works at New Lots now. There's flexible furniture out in the whole sidewalk all along the street. It's very popular to do that. And I think that the intention is to have it be as open as they can to the public, but it's their space.
Yeah, there's
They want to be able to control it.
I'm a library guy. There's precedent, right? The Ridgewood Public Library, very, very similar situation where there's a lovely sort of outdoor garden and seating area that's within their grounds, fenced in within their library. They control access 100% of the time. This feels a little bit more open though than that. And certainly it could be created as such because you're sort of starting anew here, right? So I guess my question is BPL here to talk a little bit about their vision for this? Because I'd be interested as a library person to hear from the library.
So,
yeah, so as you mentioned, it is BPL property and we would like to have control over that for obvious reasons, maintenance, security. But, I think what we're trying to do and trying to accomplish is find that middle ground between placing, a 6-foot fence and also just having some control. I think that's our intention. And then with respect to the open space, certainly needs to be developed internally with, multiple groups, but I think the intention would be to keep it as an open space with movable furniture so that it would be, I think, most of the time it would be furnished with movable furniture, not a blank closet.
But you do see how odd it would be to be in that open space and have a fence between you and the marker, the Central Park.
Yeah, so there is a fence that exists there now. We've had preliminary conversations with parks about potentially having opportunities of actual physical connection.
And that you could have.
We could have a gate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think also the fence is a great design problem. If there does need to be a fence, if there can be a gate, can the fence be thought of in the same way as you're thinking of the facade as something that actually does have some narratives to it? And it's done in a way that frames specific views out, right? Like I can't speak to whether the fence comes off or on, but it shouldn't be a utilitarian element if that relationship is so important.
The point is the fence is content. And big.
Some of the park is fenced with a 4 feet high picket fence. So we using the similar fence to keep us in the community as well, rather going maybe in a different direction.
But when the library is open, then you're gonna allow for flow. And that's where the.
In relation to, my comment is in relation to the type of fence.
And that's.
That
And that's totally fine, right? But if we're framing the space to look at the monument, but we're looking at a utilitarian fence, again, it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Maybe it's just that moment where the fence expresses itself differently. Again, through a gate, through a frame, through some narratives to create that acknowledgement.
I just, on that point, just to get into the building, now we have the library here.
Yeah.
Is there a door from that African American collection? And there
Double
are
height.
paths.
You're talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I can go there, there's a path on the ground, but there, and one goes to a hole, which is double height, and one looks like there's a door there.
We would like for a door to be there. And the design team is looking at that. I think, the flag, you want to speak to the problem?
Just to be.
Right now it's environmental, like we need a vestibule there.
Oh, you need us to. You said that indent, whatever.
Yeah, we would need a vestibule to accommodate that, and we would obviously make it ADA compliant and all. So we're just trying to work around those constraints right now. That was something that came up at the latter end that hasn't made it in yet.
Can I ask one more question since you're here? So the open space will be automatically open as long as library hours are up, or because that isn't always the case with these sorts of spaces, right? Sometimes you just open the gate if there's a program or a planned event. So I guess my question is, I don't know what your hours are at New Lots, if you're 10 to 4 on Tuesdays and 11 to 8 on Wednesdays, just like we did when I worked at Queens Library. But whatever that is that when you plan to open it, or will it be even less and just open for programs and planned events?
I think it's a conversation that's ongoing, to be completely honest, but I think the intention would be to have the plaza closed when the library is closed and to have it open when the library is open. There would be moments when the library is open when branch staff would like to have that for events like gardening or you know, kiddo stuff. But I think in large part it's open when the library is open.
I think you kind of need to define that program a little bit more to allow the open space to evolve. We have seen libraries where it's a similar condition. There's no connection between the building and the open space, but the open space is extremely open to the neighborhood. So it does feel like a natural flow in and out of people. There's other places where the open space is completely accessible only from the interior of the building and is mostly furnished with elements that support library uses on the exterior, reading circles, desks, things like that. And I think that's why we're asking all of these questions, because right now the open space feels a little bit vague.
Yeah.
And I think defining that, even if it changes in the future, but having a stronger narrative will help ground what the open space wants.
Also, I want to observe that, like, because you have this heavily planted buffer and because there's no opening here, what you have is a situation where you have a great deal of transparency visually into this space, but no access. So that strikes me as like sort of inviting maybe not desirable activities there that seem separate both from the street and the library, because in order to access that space, I would need to leave and come around this way. So I think underscoring Isabel's point, I really think it's for you and your colleagues to just, once you know how you want to use it and you're saying, okay, we're putting it a kind of stake in the ground and saying, this is what we're going to do, then the design team can design accordingly. But right now, I think it's very telling that because it's unclear what you want to do, the scheme and the circulation and the kind of visual access and physical access to it are unclear because they don't know what you want to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Commissioner Carey, would you like to?
No, my question was, libraries normally just have two entrances? I mean, one entrance and rather your backside. I mean, to add a second egress out the side requires security, requires somebody to sit there all the time. I mean, it's a real entrance. It has to be, doesn't it?
If there was a connection between the library and the plaza directly.
Right.
Yeah, it would serve as a.
So I mean,
secondary entrance.
I just think that the front entrance is perfectly.
It's, yeah, no, it's.
you know,
Maybe to everyone's point here, but there's still some work to be done, but I think, you know, the desire for the interior to plaza connection is, you know, you don't want to have folks check out a book, go out and then to read a book outside in the, you know, in the plaza. You want there to be some sort of internal.
So they're just going out there when they're not in the library. I mean, you have a complicated relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to put that, but one of the complicated relationship is on the roof.
Yes.
No, I have a library in mind. So you've got a roof deck.
Yes.
And you have doors going out.
Yes.
And people are going out there, a lot of space up there.
Mm.
I guess there's a roof garden, and then where do I walk? I walk on the brick areas, all right? Nowhere else.
There's.
Two areas to walk. This one? Yeah. Off of this. And then off of the. But I can't go around because of the grass. Yes, you just want it, the straight look, you know, you don't get to be On that roof deck and into the garden, that's my question. And it was wonderful, sure. Downstairs, exactly, to the west. North, and it's east, sorry. Yeah,
The gardens there.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think
it.
it's the end.
So what was that intentional?
It's a massing, so we need to be set back off the streets on the west and north sides, so that.
No, what I'm asking is like, you have planters here that
Yes.
make this side of it not accessible.
Yeah, so most of that, I mean, it gets pretty narrow in here, like this, that can certainly extend.
Yeah, I guess.
I think it was I'm thinking it's like a balance between, the number of occupants that the library wanted to have on the terrace and.
I mean, you're already taking, let's say, some real with that setback, as I look at it, which is great. I mean, that's why they're there, to get people challenge them, right? So is the height of your building is on parts to the west, right? And not say back, like where you're asking, or I'm asking, where I could look to the northeast. Because that, it doesn't respond, it's just a setback that was established before this concept of the relationship to Berry Rent. True or false?
I think. So.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, I'm just looking at this, yeah, that's what back.
There wasn't an intention to create that connection.
That was made, there's no intention to make a relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But it's,
So you could argue for it if you so
Doesn't want to
desire.
change that.
And I think you will.
Yeah, but for clarity's sake, I would like 3 scenarios of usage. Because that will limit scope and allow the design to cohere. You know, like you could use it for a bunch of things, but what are the 3 ways that you'd like people to use this phone? Most, and that will allow the design to bend toward it. And I think will give a good understanding of how it is that you want to serve the community as well. You know what I mean? And then further than that, I think that the park itself mirrors the circular nature of the Sankofa Park that's exterior to it, will always feel dissonant if there isn't like reciprocity. You know what I mean? Like, so that fence line has to break. And it could be conceptual, I mean, it's a conceptual element. It has to break, or it has to have some way of making a portal. And like on page 21, where you see it and there's like, it says native grasses. If those native grasses are wild and they grow up, no one will ever feel comfortable to stand in there to look onto the market, which is just on the other side.
Yeah.
And that will always be dissonant. So you have to deal with that content element, and I think everybody said that, and I think we've given you so much stuff now that you gotta stop.
Yes, right, I'm gonna.
Wait, can I just say,
Yeah,
can I say one thing?
You have the last word,
Can I-
Isabel, unless there's a. Oh, please, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear that that northern fence line is not ours. So whatever negotiation we have on that northern fence line has to be with Parks. So it's not part of our, yeah, yeah,
But I'm sure they would be amenable to you.
yeah, because we do not disagree at all.
You guys will lodge, but please make that acknowledgement, because I get right now, it just feels like. It's not there. I want to say one last thing about the roof terrace. I have similar concerns with the open space on the ground floor about how is this used. That area to the, I guess this is the west. It's kind of a funny shape. That's not very usable. And I think people, if they see activity on the terrace on the south, they're going to want to cut across the planting to get there. So is it a stronger gesture maybe to have planting along the edges and a more central space in the middle? You know, planting only does well if it's in a significant mass, and so does usable space. So creating little spaces may not be to the benefit of the program. Just a thought.
Thank you. Those are helpful comments. And I just, to be clear, this is actually public access for anybody in the library. This access is for the adults in the Adult Learning Center. And so having separate areas was actually important, but to your point, I think we can continue to study how that works and how the planting works.
Yeah, maybe the planting just doesn't get as far, maybe
Yeah.
it stops short. And then maybe, again, think about how it's used. Is it movable tables and chairs?
Yeah.
Like how many do you actually fit in there? Just scale wise, I could see maybe 2 tables and that's it.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
So just, you know, again, thinking about day-to-day use and the balance of landscape or planting versus landscape.
Right.
So we're going to have to wrap this up. I want to give you, Bill, I see you had a final comment and opportunity, and Jimmy as well. Is that a no?
No, I was just saying if he wanted to speak.
Okay. Jimmy.
Very quickly, everything is fully ADA compliant. I just want to be sure that that roof deck is beautiful, but also a little tricky. You've received a lot of feedback. It's great to see so much feedback on a library project because libraries are so important. I just want to say, I think this is wonderful. Obviously, there'll be lots of opportunities to change or tinker and adapt and improve. But this is a remarkable achievement, particularly when we think about what's there today. And I just have to, again, give credit to Inez Barron. Without her, we are not here today to even look at this. And I certainly hope she has a good time cutting the ribbon on that.
Summarize the comments, which were, as Jimmy just noted, voluminous. And I'm going to sift them down to try to get the key point, which is first, you said when you were beginning to present that you were looking to create a structure that had a sense of craft, culture, and joy. So I want to say that the only reason that we have had the kind of energy for the voluminous comments that we've offered here is because clearly you have achieved that, and it's a very exciting project and will change the nature of this community forever. So, let's just say that. And then, with regard to our comments about the structure, I think the main question that Kenseth raised, and I appreciate your point about being open to interpretation, is sort of really taking a hard look at that screen and thinking about, if it's weaving, does it need to be doing something different? Looking at it from the inside out, how the views relate to the text, really all the many things that we said about that. I think that's the main thing to do with the structure. I mean, we hear you on the kind of lifting the veil of ignorance, the transparency of the base. Those are all good points. In the end, the beauty of having multiple interpretations is important, and that's fine. We just want you to kind of think carefully about that in connection with your intent, not with our intent, but with yours. And then with regard to the outdoor spaces, I think really the key point there, there's two. One has to do with the programming of how the library will use the space. And I think, as Kent suggested, if you have 3 specific things, or really maybe it'll be 1 specific thing, I think it'll be much easier for the team. The circulation in and out on that east side of the building, I think, is going to be very important. And then that relates to the point that Isabel raised, which is, and really everyone raised, which is really, how does this outdoor space connect to the Sankofa Park and the visual connection to the marker, which right now it's like almost there, but you don't want to have a situation where, while this in plan reads like you have these interesting axes, but actually experientially it doesn't really do that. And right now I think that's a risk. So yeah, I think those, I don't think I think those are the sort of the main points in and out, but really just to summarize, such an exciting project. And, I think I can speak for everyone when we say we can't wait to see it built. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing your preliminary presentation. Thank you so much for this work.
Thank you all. Thank you.
And with that, our meeting is concluded and adjourned.